Oh boy, let's finally talk about it. Your guitar tone will never sound like mine. No matter how many of my videos you watch, no matter how well you copy every single little setting that you see in those videos, or anyone else's for that matter, it will never ever be the same. I recently got a comment from YouTube account Shang Tsung, and this is what it says. It says, I tried everything you did, but my tone still sounds nothing like yours. It's very flat and muddy. Am I missing something? So what's the deal? Are all of us YouTubers and artists just faking it? Is there some like secret sauce or secret pedal or secret cable that we're not telling you guys about? Although that would make for an excellent story, no. Absolutely not. That would be ridiculous. So what gives? Why is it that if you copied every single setting that you see on one of my videos or anyone else's to the exact decimal point, why will it never sound exactly the same on your setup? Well, there's actually a few major reasons, and it's important that we go through them. The first thing we need to talk about is hardware, and specifically the guitars. Guitar, in some cases more than others, are very, very different from each other. And all of these little differences, no matter how minor they may seem, can all accumulate and build up and actually make a pretty big drastic difference to the guitar signal, which then, you know, results in the tone sounding a little bit different. Different makes of guitars can sound different. I'm sure if you watched a video of someone dialing in a tone and they were dialing it in on their, 4-pound, extremely lightweight, chambered, headless Strandberg guitar that's made of the lightest woods on the planet, and you have like a stocky, built like a brick house Gibson Les Paul with the densest woods on earth, I don't think it's going to translate exactly the same. Even though that's a really extreme example of the differences between two types of guitars, you can still definitely expect to hear a difference in the raw signal themselves. Another thing is pickups. Different pickups will have a different effect on the signal, and I don't want to hear that pickups don't make a difference, because I'm fucking tired of people who don't know how to play guitar properly say that they don't. They very much do, and I'm definitely gonna make a video on that in the future. There's so many different outputs that a pickup can have. It can be low output, medium output, high output, really high output, really hot pickups like Active Fishman's or something like that. Depending on how high the pickup is, if it's really low into the body, you might get a little bit of a cleaner sound. If it's higher up to the strings, you get a more raw, robust kind of sound. Even the actual placement of the pickup itself within the guitar and where it's routed in the body. Is it close to the bridge? Is it a little bit further away from the bridge? On one hand, you hear people say that it's not the guitar has nothing to do with it, it's just the pickups that makes the tone of an electric guitar. And then the same people say that pickups don't matter. So like, which one is it? What the f? Even the actual hardware on the guitar, like the bridge, for example, can have a massive effect on the tone. Look at this guitar, for example. This is my only Ibanez guitar that I own, and it's for good reason. This is the Meshuggah 8-string signature guitar. It is an absolute unit of an instrument. This guitar is known to sound absolutely astounding, especially for that, low tuned, detuned, 8-string, Meshuggah-y type of playing, obviously, since it's a Meshuggah guitar. And the main reason being for that sentiment is even though you tune stupid low, for example, this is in double drop D, so a whole octave lower than drop D on a 6-string, it just has this really nice clarity to it, and you can still hear every single note very, very clearly. When you take a look at this bridge and you just see that it's made of a huge chunk of metal and it's seated inside the guitar into a resonant, non-finished ash body, do you really think that this isn't going to affect the tone of the instrument when the strings are literally sitting inside of this bridge? Look at how close this bridge pickup is to the bridge. It's so close. That alone is a unique enough specification to make this guitar have a certain sound, and trust me, it definitely does. There's so many differences in the hardware of a guitar, or just the guitar itself, that even if all of those little differences made up for 1% each, by the time you look at your guitar and then look at the one that you're trying to replicate in a video or in a song or whatever, all of those little differences can actually add up and make quite a big difference to the overall guitar tone. And when you factor in other elements of the guitar signal, like the cable that you use and the interface that it plugs into, it's very easy to see that even if you have the exact same settings of something that you're trying to replicate, if you don't have the same guitar or you don't have the same hardware, it's most likely not going to sound the same. The second thing to talk about is the setup of the guitar. Now, this is by far one of the most underappreciated and overlooked aspects of a guitar tone. Recently, I had a guitar chat with the guys in Tesseract, and we were talking about how they like to have their action higher than most on their guitars, as they believe that, it results in a more transparent tone, and I would agree with them. The way that a guitar is set up and the way that a guitar is played is always going to have a major effect on the actual guitar signal that it emits and how you physically play that instrument, which will ultimately affect the guitar tone. For example, if you like an extremely low action in your guitar, what you most likely find is that you're probably going to get a little bit more top end in your tone, purely from the fact that if your strings are seated lower to the fretboard and they're more likely to buzz against those frets, naturally, what's that? Metal on metal, you're going to be getting a little bit more high resonances and a little bit more shrillness in the tone from all of that buzz. If your strings are old or musty or just straight up dead, you're most likely going to find that your tone probably doesn't sound as present as the one that you're hearing on YouTube. And that's because they probably changed their strings 5 minutes before they started that video and you've had yours on for 3 months. Even things like string thickness will have an effect on the tone. If you like really, really thick strings, you're most likely going to find that it sounds a little bit rounder, a little bit more robust. It doesn't really last as long either because it's a thicker string. If you have a thinner string, you most likely find that it's a little bit snappier and they do last a little bit longer as well. The general consensus, especially with like high gain modern metal tones, is that if you can get away with using a thin string, then use it. Even the tuning that you play your guitar in will have an effect on how you dial in a guitar tone. This is my Jackson MDK 7-string Evertune. This one is my Jackson Misha Mansour HT6, right? This is my 6th string. I keep this in drop C sharp and it sounds like this. That's a whole 5 semitones higher than the 7 string. 5? A sharp, B, C, C sharp. Yes, 5. 5 semitones higher, right? You just heard both of those guitars being played on the exact same guitar tone with nothing changed. And what you probably noticed is that the HT6 sounded a little bit shrill at times and it sounded a little bit too top-endy and a bit harsh, right? You probably also heard that there was little to no bottom end. That's because I dialed in the tone on this guitar. I dialed it in on the 7 string tuned to drop A flat. If your guitar is tuned differently to a video that you're watching, your guitar is literally producing different resonant peaks and frequencies in that tuning, and they are going to affect the guitar signal and how it hits the front of the amp. If your guitar is tuned lower, what you find is that your frequencies are likely to start shifting to the left on the frequency spectrum, more towards the bass side, right? And naturally your signal is probably going to be a little bit louder, as bass is typically louder. If you think about that and how the loudness of a guitar signal will affect how it hits the front of the amp or front of a pedal or something like that, it makes it very obvious to kind of realize that, you know, not everything is the same. This is why it's so important to understand all of these aspects when you're dialing in a guitar tone, because if you can understand all these little things about, you know, the tuning that you're playing in, the strings that you're using, the setup of the instrument, you will then be even more informed on how to dial in a tone based on those characteristics. And when you watch a video online of someone using a little bit of a different setup, you might notice that they make certain moves to cater to that. So then you can understand how to reverse engineer that and do that on your part as well. And lastly, the most important thing about why your tone will never sound like mine is the player. You will never sound like me. I will never sound like you. You will never sound like James Hetfield. James Hetfield will never sound like you or me. The most important aspect of a guitar tone is the player. You've heard it a million times before. Tone is in the hands. A debate that's almost as old as time itself. But what does that mean? How does our hands affect the guitar tone? I'm just gonna be straight up. If there's anyone that tries to tell you that your hands, right? Literally the only fucking things that you're using to play the instrument, if anyone tries to tell you that your hands have no effect on the guitar tone, they are 100% delusional. How hard you pick the strings, right? How soft you fret or how hard you fret, how tight you play, how well you're muting the guitar with your right hand muting or your picking hand muting, right? All of these things are captured in your playing. Your hands are making this happen. They're in the takes, they're in the recordings, and they are embodied in the guitar signal that will then hit the front of an amp. They are your personality. They are your individuality. Everything that your hands do on the guitar is you. All of that is embodied into a guitar signal in real time as you play the instrument. To even suggest that this doesn't make an effect on your guitar tone is absolute rubbish. So the next time that you're watching anyone's tone demos online and you're looking to get their tone and you start copying every single setting that you see on the screen, don't expect to have the exact same guitar tone unless you have the exact same guitar going through the exact same signal chain, set up the exact same way, and you're them, you're playing the guitar. Instead, listen to how they dial it in. Listen to the videos of what they're saying. Listen to what they're looking for in their tone and all the auditory cues that they're listening for and how they achieve that by dialing in the amp. If you want to see a video of me going through this exact process of me explaining every move and why that I do it, you can watch this video here where I dial in a tone in 5 minutes. Thank you so much. I'll catch you guys next time. Ciao.